Hey everybody, and welcome to AMC Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm your host, Sinead DeFries, and this is The Daily Show, where we bring you the latest news from the world of movies, plus some insight into what it all means. Joining us, as always, is Editor-in-Chief for AMC Movie News, John Campea.
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, coming to you live from right here at our very own AMC Movie News headquarters in Burbank, California, and we are so glad you decided to make us part of your day.
Also here is AMC Production Manager, Dennis Sen.
Hello, everyone. This is my first time on the Movie Talk.
Yes, it's the first time. That's right.
Which is weird because I've been living here practically day and night for the last 3 weeks with you and Jonathan and Ray. So it's like weird to actually be here because I've been here for every show.
And also AMC's Christian Harloff.
Hello, everybody. I wanted to thank everyone for the wonderful support on the first episode of Jedi Council. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So as most of you know by now, Disney chairman Bob Iger announced yesterday that the name of the first Star Wars spin-off movie will be Rogue One. Later in his presentation, Iger also made it official that director Rian Johnson will be writing and directing Star Wars Episode VIII and revealed it will hit AMC theaters on May 26th, 2017, moving off the month of December that both Rogue One and Episode VII are using for release. John, what do you think about Star Wars moving back to May for Episode VIII?
So much happiness. So much happiness and joy about this. Look, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it means just like 6 months after or 5 months after the first spinoff film, we're getting Star Wars Episode, which means only about less than a full year and a half after Episode 7, we're getting Episode 8. So that's all great. But even more importantly, Episode 8 will now be releasing on the 40th anniversary plus 1 day. It's going to be opening 40 years plus 1 day after the original wide release of Star Wars, the original Star Wars film. So I think it's very symbolic. I think it's great. Star Wars belongs in May. I have no problem with them opening these other films in December. That's fine. But to me, Star Wars belongs in May. I'm so glad it's going there. Terrific news for me, Christian.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's absolutely the reason why they moved it was because of the 40th anniversary for sure. I also think that they've had a plan. They know where it's going. It's not just like they said, we'll just put it out this time. Rian Johnson's been hard working on this thing. He's been writing the script. They announced it so they're confident with it. What I'm curious about is I hope that the spinoffs live in December. I hope that that's the case. I hope they don't start moving everything in May. I like the fact that the original Star Wars, the episodes live in May. That's great because I'm also curious now because we have the Episode 8 coming out in May of 2017. Does that mean they're going to throw another spin-off in December 2017? Or are you going to have to wait another year and a half before the next Star Wars? You know what I mean? So you'll get like a 5.5 month, then you'll get a year and a half. So it's curious. I'm interested to see how they're going to announce it.
I think it's a smart business move. I mean, remember the Episode 7 originally was supposed to come out earlier around the same time in May, but J.J. Abrams needed more time, so they pushed it back to December. I mean, Star Wars is not a December type of movie. It's a summer movie, so I think it's a good business move, and I actually disagree with you. I would prefer them just to have the spin-offs and the episodes in May every year. That way, every year I know in May.
Like clockwork.
Yeah, there's a Star Wars movie coming.
Sinead, what's next?
Following that announcement from Disney that Star Wars Episode 8 would be opening on May 26, 2017, Fox quickly moved to announce that they are moving the release date for Fantastic Four 2. Originally slated for release on June 2, 2017, just 1 week after Episode 8, Fox has now bumped the film back 1 week to June 9, 2017. Dennis, was this a good move for Fox?
Definitely a good move because you guys talked about this, I think, yesterday on the show about breathing room. You need at least a minimum of a couple weeks between like another big movie that overlaps. I mean, if you do like a comedy and an action movie on the same weekend, that's two different demographics. But something like this, Fantastic Four and Star Wars, there's plenty of overlap. And then even remember when there was the whole game of chicken between Marvel and DC, between
Captain America and Batman vs. Superman?
Yeah, exactly. And Batman vs. Superman is the bigger movie, but even then they moved it up. They blinked first because they had more to lose than Marvel did, and even a bigger movie had to move because they didn't want to do that. So I think this is a good, smart business move by Fox.
Christian?
Yeah, I agree as well, and I won't be eating my shoe. We'll talk about that some other time. But the reason it just goes back to our previous conversation. I agree with you, Dennis. That's why that was my point with Guardians, is to give it some breathing room. And I think that by doing this, if they indeed stick to even this date, yeah, you get out of the way of Star Wars. It's going to be a beast, especially after the success of Episode 7. Get out of the way, and let's hopefully the first one, Fantastic Four, is great, and then Fantastic 2 will have that breathing room to be successful as well.
Yeah, well, this was a no-brainer. You had to make the move. And I even like that they just moved it 1 week. Like, I think they understood. You said it right. You need breathing room. You don't need a wide berth, right? Star Wars is going to come in and it's going to make its money and it's going to dominate for a week or two. After a couple of weeks, everybody who's like us, who is dying to see it, we will have seen it 3 or 4 times in the first 2 weeks, right? That's a good time for Fantastic Four to come out too. So I like the fact that they moved it. You can't have it the very following week. But I also like that they just moved it the 1 week because I think they know you don't have to over-exaggerate and get too far away from it. I think it's going to be just fine. And I still like the fact that they're even planning a Fantastic Four 2, which tells us they got to have at least a little bit of confidence in the first one they're doing. At least a little, at any rate. All right, folks, we've reached that part of the show for Mailbag. No, buy and sell.
Bias.
I always get this confused. I have show notes in front of me. I still get it confused. For buy and sell, here's how this works. In front of her, Sinead's got a few other items in the world of movie news. She's going to run them down. Those of us at the table are simply going to say whether we buy it or sell it. So, Sinead, what do we got?
Director of the upcoming Mission Impossible 5, Christopher McQuarrie, has taken to his Twitter account to announce that they have officially wrapped shooting on the film. Mission Impossible 5 stars Tom Cruise, Alec Baldwin, Simon Pegg, and Ving Rhames, and is set to hit AMC theaters on July 31st. Christian, considering that the film has just finished shooting and the release date is only 4 months away, do you buy or sell that Mission Impossible 5 will be ready for its July 31st release date?
Yeah, I totally buy it. They knew that this was going to happen when they decided to move it. You don't just move it and go, oh, let's. They had a structure. They had a plan. They said, look, we'll move it to this date. We'll finish up shooting. Start editing on it now. Editing whatever they've shot so far, and they know this. They have to plan it in order to make that release date in the first place. Because when they announced it, we all went, whoa! They must have a lot of confidence in it, and they must say this. Because
it was a December release originally, December, right?
Yeah. And it was going to come right around the time of Episode 7. So another one that got out of the way. And in doing that, they knew they had to structure this thing out. They had to have blueprints to say, we'll finish shooting at this time. Everything else will be. They started editing it already. They already did. So yeah, it'll come out exactly when they say it will.
Yeah, I mean, I buy it too. Actually, I really do think that it will be, because here's the thing: a lot of people have this perception about the movie, industry, that you shoot the movie, then once the movie's all shot, then it goes to editing. And then once the editing's all done, then it goes to the visual effects. No, this is all happening at the same time. Like 5 minutes after they shot one scene, that thing gets boxed up, sent off. There are some assistant editors and then take it. They label it. They log all of it. And they're starting to edit that thing as they're still shooting the movie. They're shooting effects and stuff like that. And I think you raised the best point here, is that when they move this movie up 5 or 6 months, which we were all really pleasantly surprised at, because usually they're moving it back 5 or 6 months, we all thought, okay, this must be aggressive. But you're right. They wouldn't have made that move unless they sat down with a team of line producers and said, this is the way the schedule will work. We'll blah, 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 finish shooting this time. This will give us a certain amount of time to do this. So while I do agree with pessimists about this, that this is a tight timeline, I think they already knew that. And I think they're going to have this done no problem. Dennis?
I'm going to sell it. I mean, it's possible, and maybe you guys are right, but I'm just thinking about, okay, so even if they are editing it, which they should be while it was in production, you still have color correction and sound mixing. And a lot of directors take a lot of time doing those processes. They take weeks just for those two. So they still have to do the visual effects, finish up the editing. And Christopher McQuarrie, he's only done 3 movies. So this is his 3rd movie. He did Way of the Gun and he did Jack Reacher. And this is much, much larger. So I don't know. I won't be surprised in like a couple months they decide to move it a little bit back into the fall.
July? We meant August.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's possible. All right. What's next?
According to a report from the horror site Bloody Disgusting, the upcoming Paramount Pictures continuation of the Ring franchise, currently titled Rings, is actually going to be a prequel to The Ring and The Ring 2, set years before the events of the first film. The Ring and The Ring 2 are remakes of the Japanese Ringu series by director Hideo Nakata, which had 4 films. Dennis, do you buy or sell a Ring prequel film?
I'm going to sell this as well. I actually like the first Ring movie, the remake for America. I'm not a huge horror fan, but it kind of played more into what I like about horror, which is more psychological, more creepy versus blood and guts and all that stuff. But I never watched the second one and I had no interest in seeing a prequel. So for me, it's a sell.
I am going to, surprisingly enough, just by a margin, I'm going to buy this. I don't like prequels in general, but I think there's something you could do here that's pretty cool. You're right. The Ring is one of those examples that you can, when people say, no remake is ever good. Well, actually, The Ring was actually pretty good. Was it as good as Ringu? No. Was The Grudge as good as Guan, or whatever the original pronunciation was? No, it wasn't. But I think there's something here that you can work with. I think there's something here that you can do as good. And I hope every time they're remaking a Japanese horror movie, the reason I kind of prefer Japanese horror movies and most Asian horror films in general is that they seem to have this understanding that the scariest thing you can possibly do on film is the things you don't see. They understand that the scariest things about films are the atmosphere you create. In North America, we seem to have a different approach. We create horror with the axe slicing through the throat and all that kind of stuff, and which is fun and great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. But there's something about those Japanese horror movies, man. Every time they remake one, I think, please bring a little bit more of that into the North American stage. That would be awesome. So for me, just by a little bit, I'm going to give it a buy.
I'm going to sell it. I agree with Dennis that the first one the remake was really good, and it is absolutely the same things you like about horror movies when they're done right is the reason I like them too. They get good actors, and they focus on the psychological element of it, and that's what I enjoy. But then the second one was a cash grab. Now, to me, this one could be doing the same thing, just playing off of the name and the success because they don't know how to do it. Like, well, I don't know if a Ring 3 will work, so why don't we do a prequel? But like you said, John, they could wind up doing exactly what they did right for the elements of the remake and knock it out of the park and say, well, that's everything I liked about the first one. Well done. So it's not a huge sell, but it's a sell by hearing about it.
Now, remember, the last film in Nakata's series, I believe, was a prequel too. I think it was called Ring Zero. And I think that was a prequel as well. So now they haven't said they're remaking that prequel. It might be a completely original thing, but it'll be curious to see how this works out. All right, what's next?
On yesterday's AMC Movie Talk, news broke that Disney has officially announced that they are moving forward with Frozen 2, a sequel to the 2013 smash hit film that went on to become the highest-grossing animated film of all time and the fifth biggest box office film of any genre of all time, making over $1.3 billion behind only Avatar, Titanic, Avengers, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. No release date for the new film was given. John, buy or sell Disney moving ahead with the Frozen sequel?
Well, you got to buy. you got to buy. But it's still those are some stunning numbers. You know, I'm just starting to lay the groundwork right now of our new Madness tournament. Remember last year we did the Superhero Madness tournament where we took 64 of the great superhero movies and we got down and got our final one. Our next one's going to be based on all-time animated films. And so I've been laying the groundwork for that, looking at all these great, amazing animated films. And by far, the biggest box office one of all of them was Frozen, which is a movie I enjoyed when I watched it very much, but biggest of all time. You could write, I'm sure there are going to be studies in film school about what made it click so well with the audience that got them going back again and again. That being said, $1.3 billion. Yeah, you do another one. Obviously, you do another one. And to be fair, from just a movie making point of view, there are things you can do with these characters. This was a world they made that it's ripe with potential story possibilities. It's a fantasy. It's like a female-centric adventure. The girls love these things. So even if it didn't make $1.3 billion, I'd be all on board for them making another ones. For me, big buy. Dennis?
I think with the animated March Madness bracket that we're going to do, I think it's going to be less obvious than last time.
Oh, I agree.
Because with Superhero one, we knew the final two
were going to be
The Dark Knight and Avengers. We knew those two. This one is going to be a lot different. It could be anything, but I'll buy this. This is a no-brainer. It made a ton of money, like you said. I liked it as well. I didn't love it. I actually liked Wreck-It Ralph and Big Hero 6 a lot more.
Me too.
So when you announced it, I think yesterday on Movie Talk, I was like, oh, it wasn't greenlit already? And then kind of looked it up, and I guess the co-directors had said in an interview just a week ago that they had no plans on remaking it or making a sequel. I'm like, okay, so basically they lied to you until they are allowed to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's a huge buy. You hear those stats when Sinead's reading them off, and you're like, there are movies that make far less than what the first one make, and they get 2, 3, and 4 already signed up. So yeah, it makes absolute sense that they would do this, and that they should. I am one of those. I really did enjoy it a lot, but I think one of the main reasons that they'll find in those classes that you mentioned of why it did so well is that you watch, like, women really responded to this movie. Like, my daughter, 3, loves it. My wife, not 3, loves it.
17 guys, 17.
But it's from all ages. like they respond, and I really enjoyed it watching. It was in my top 10 for that year.
Are you sick of the song yet, though? I mean,
sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I understand how everyone.
Well, I can understand why you wouldn't, because probably 90% of the time that you hear the song is probably coming out of the mouth of your daughter, which would just be adorable.
That's why. Yeah.
You know, it's funny too. My wife and I, we are a pair of those like creepy adults who we just go to Disneyland by ourselves without kids. We really like Disneyland, but every time we go, you will lose count within 5 minutes of how many little girls are in Elsa and Anna dresses. I mean, the little girls especially, this was a movie that just captured them.
My daughter has both. She's an
Does she have both of them? Oh, get ready to buy the green one, because now they got a green dress.
And the Snoogies, whatever they're called.
The Snoogies. But actually, you know what, Sinead, as the lone female at the table, and knowing that this was a film that was really targeted females, what did you think of Frozen?
I mean, I loved it. I mean, I did really, really like it. And I've watched it, I think like just 3 months ago, I was home like sick and I watched it twice in one day. So it is like one of those movies that I think appeals to girls and whatever. But I was always very surprised at just how well.
Oh, it just kept going. So
it just never ended.
You've got an Elsa dress in your thing, right?
I do, you know. I put it on, you know, at night, and I just walk around in it
and sleep in it.
Doing the dishes, like let it go. Yeah.
All right, folks. Now we have reached that part of the show for Mailbag. Listen, if you've got a topic or a question you'd like us to address on the show, you can email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. So, Sinead, what's in our mailbag?
Dejan Borjanovic writes, "Hello, AMC crew. This question is for all of you. Is your favorite movie directed by your favorite director? For me, my favorite director would have to be Spielberg, but my favorite movie is Marvel's The Avengers. Thanks."
Yeah, if you guys have been watching us for any period of time, you know I think in my personal opinion, there's lots of varying degrees, especially at this table, but I think by far the greatest director of all time is Spielberg. I mean, when you look at not only the individual films he's done every kind of film and done them with excellence. You know, he's done comedy, he's done horror, he's done war movies, he's done fantasy and adventure and sci-fi, and he's done all of it, and they're all bloody fantastic. The irony is, I don't have one of Spielberg's films in any of my top 10s. Like when you go down my all-time favorite top 10, whether you're talking about Star Wars, Spartacus, Ben-Hur, Lawrence of Arabia, Shawshank Redemption, Highlander. I mean, you start going through all these, none of them are Spielberg films. So I agree with you that Spielberg is my personal favorite, but no, he has not directed any of my top 10 favorite films of all time, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Christian, what about you?
Well, Spielberg would be in some of his movies would be my top 10, like Raiders for sure. But as far as in the top, no, because Scorsese, Tarantino, Spielberg are my guys for sure, and my top is Empire Strikes Back, and Braveheart's up there for me too.
Love Braveheart.
Yeah, so and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorites as well. So no, it was a great question because there are so many different, like some of my favorites that are not done by my favorite directors.
Well, for me, it is. My favorite director is Martin Scorsese. My favorite movie is Goodfellas. However, there's a plenty of other movies that are in my top 5 or 10, like you mentioned Lawrence of Arabia by David Lean. You have Godfather by Francis Ford Coppola. And I don't consider them some of my favorite directors, but I mean, City of God. There's a bunch of other ones, Amadeus. But it just shows you that a movie, if it hits right with the right script, right director, right actors, it can be phenomenal. But that doesn't mean the director. I think we had a question a while ago about something about like directors and how good they can be. Sometimes you just get it right that one time.
The stars all align.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's a question. Let me throw this out as a follow-up question. We ask this once in a while. This comes up a couple times and it changes once in a while. So let me ask it again. There's a Mount Rushmore of directors. Who's on the Mount Rushmore? Like for me, it would probably be, and this might be a little bit different than what I said the last time a few months ago, but it's Spielberg, it's Scorsese, it's Hitchcock, and man, either Coppola or Tarantino for me.
I'd put everyone in there, and I'd put Tarantino. And what do you have to say about Fellini?
Oh gosh, wouldn't be on my Rushmore.
No, I would put Hitchcock.
You'd have Hitchcock on there?
Hitchcock.
I'd have yours, except for I'd probably have Coppola up there.
As opposed to Tarantino.
Yeah.
But Tarantino is in all of our discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So he's up there.
I think we're all on the same page. I don't know where you're going to ultimately go with Tarantino or Coppola, but for me, I love Godfather movies, but Tarantino is a guy. If Coppola put another movie out tomorrow, yeah, I'd want to see it. But if I had to choose, if I had like a Sophie's choice between the two, you can only see the Tarantino film or Coppola. Tarantino, I get excited for. It's like an event for me. I know
that's a good way to put it, because I might, if that's a good.
But you're talking about now, though. I mean, obviously Coppola's latest few movies haven't been that great.
He also had throughout the years, if you look at their body of work as far as how many great ones, so like you can say what you will. Jack is a okay movie, but it's not great. And then you look at Tarantino. Most of Tarantino's movies are great.
Well, you have Apocalypse Now, though. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Great movie.
We can whine about this all the time. All right, what's next in the mailbag?
William Smith writes, do you think that Marvel Studios should try and make something other than movies with comic book characters? They are a movie studio after all. They claim to take risks with their properties, but it isn't that big of a risk at all. Even bad superhero movies make over $700 million nowadays. The only risk they have is if the critics dislike these movies, which, let's face it, won't hurt their huge opening weekend numbers. I mean, they are a movie studio. Why don't they try something new that's not a part of the MCU?
Well, first of all, Marvel doesn't take risks. Yeah, everything they do is a huge risk. Everything they do is a huge risk. Not everything just automatically makes $700 million. Make $700 million for a reason. They make $700 million, $800 million because they have taken risks and built on the success of those things. Then they take more risks, succeed, and then build on those things. So yeah, it's absolutely risky business that they're in. But the other thing is this. To me, that's like asking, and I understand why you're asking, but to me, it's like asking, hey, why doesn't AMC Movie News talk about sneakers? Why don't we talk about the latest line of sneakers coming out? Like, why don't we expand ourselves a little bit and talk about, well, because we're AMC Movie News, because we are part of AMC Theaters. We are a movie company. We are created to talk about movies. That's what we're here for. That's what we specialize in. Not everybody does everything. Marvel Studios, look, if you want to make other movies, that's called Disney. Disney will make the other movies. They bought Marvel and set up Marvel Studios as their arm to specifically make movies about their Marvel properties. That's why they exist. So why don't we make something? Well, Disney does make other films. They just don't put it under the Marvel banner. They put it under the Lucasfilm banner, or they put it under Pixar banner, or they put it under their own banner. That's what they're there for. So it's about specialization and why you exist to do things. Not everybody should do everything. This is my opinion on it. What do you guys think?
Well, they do take risks again, too, because guess what? Guardians, no one knew what that was. That was a huge risk.
Huge roll of dice.
And not only that, it was a sci-fi space opera. And then Captain America was a thriller, spy thriller. And then you have Ant-Man, which is a heist. They do change up their movies. They do change, but they go with their core characters, and they are also a brand. We talked about it yesterday on the show that they were in trouble at one point. That's why they sold X-Men.
Huge
That's
trouble.
why they sold Spider-Man. They had to change their direction of their studio and make sure that what they did was they went in this direction that we know now, the MCU, and it's their brand. It's their direction. You hit it right on the head when you said that Disney has the other banners that they can release stuff. This is Marvel Studios. You go to Marvel Studios to watch the Marvel properties.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on Marvel not doing other stuff, but it seriously annoys me, this notion that they're not taking any risk, especially with Guardians. That whole Guardians thing, like nobody except for John Schnepp was saying that was going to be a huge movie, right? After it comes out, everyone's like, oh yeah, I knew it. I knew Guardians was going to be huge. And it's like, oh no. And everyone's like, oh, it wasn't a risk. Marvel just makes a movie and people are going to go watch it. And that's not true. It costs $170 million to make. These are the same people who won't pay $1 on iTunes for a song are telling a movie studio, oh yeah, no big deal, $150-200 million, just go ahead, it's no risk at all. So I just don't buy that notion at all.
The huge flood of people after Guardians of the Galaxy was a hit saying, oh yeah, we knew it. No, you didn't, because 6 months, 8 months, 9 months before Guardians came out, we were constantly flooded and inundated with Twitter messages, Facebook, nah, man, this is gonna be Marvel's first bomb. This is gonna be Marvel's first bomb, and that's the risk, right? Now everybody's saying the same thing about Ant-Man. And if Ant-Man hits $400 million, then everybody will then change their tune and say, we knew it was going to be a big hit. We knew it was going to be a big, I mean, I just don't know.
Well, the other thing I'd like to take notion with the $700 million, Green Lantern, anybody?
Yeah.
Kick-Ass 2, anybody? So there are a lot of superhero movies that do not hit that. And Marvel, and look, we don't know that. Like Batman and Superman will probably
there's certain ones. There's certain ones like Star Wars we know is going to make a lot of money. Avengers we know is
we don't know Suicide Squad's going to hit that number.
We don't.
Right. But even those are risks because you make that first Star Wars movie, everybody's going to go see an opening weekend. But if you don't execute it right, if you don't roll the dice and do certain things with that movie, and you don't crush it, then sure you'll make some money on this one. But in the long run, now you've hurt your franchise, you've hurt your brand, and it's going to hurt you later. So there's always a lot of risks involved.
And Marvel themselves didn't know Guardians was going to be a big hit.
They had no.
They were confident in it, and they're like, "Oh, we can make a lot of money." There's no way they were like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be like the third biggest movie of the year." No.
That was beyond their wildest dreams. All right, folks, listen. Not only do we like to take your questions via our mailbag, and by the way, your mailbag questions. Not only are they answered here on AMC Movie Talk, but we also have a weekend show, AMC Mailbag, where you can see your question answered there. So make sure you check out our mailbag shows as well. But we also like to take your questions via Twitter. We love interacting with you guys on Twitter. So if you've got a question you'd like to see your Twitter account up on our show, tweet a question to us with the hashtag AMC Movie Talk. Send it on in. We'll pick a few out and we'll see if yours gets on here. So Sinead, what do we got picked out?
At Beta Artemis tweets, Furious 7 box office predictions for opening weekend, 115 million or higher. Avengers level numbers possible. Can't talk, sorry.
115 is high. What did 6 open at? Didn't 6 open at like 85?
It was like 85 or 90.
Yeah.
Actually, that's 115 is an interesting number because that's actually making me say Avengers numbers. No, because Avengers numbers is double that.
200 something.
Yeah, it's 200 something. So it's not going to do Avengers, nor does it need to be considered a massive success. I'm going to say, I'm going to go 100 on the nose. I'm going to go 100 on the nose. I think they are building on their success. They're building on their popularity. The trailers for this new one have looked wonderful, really exciting. So I think it will be bigger than 6. 115 million, I think, is ambitious. Who knows, though, right? But for now, I'll say 100 million, Dennis.
I'll go a little over, but still under 115. I'll go like 105. I think it's going to make over 100, but not reach what he's talking about.
I'll price is right you. 106.
Oh.
$1, Bob.
Yeah.
$1.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that the tragic loss of Paul Walker is going to add to that as well. Because, anytime you have a star like that passed away, I mean, even though Dark Knight's one of the best comic book movies of all time, the passing of Heath Ledger certainly contributed to the box office as well, too. So I think that will do something. And yeah, it's just been a really fun ride, pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, I should just want to throw in here, too, full props to Universal Studios, by the way, who I think there are a lot of executives out there and a lot of studios that would have tried to capitalize on the tragedy of Paul Walker to promote their movie, and they have not. I think they have handled this so well, right from the moment of pausing production, getting back on the horse and getting the movie going, how they found a way to retire the character. We haven't seen how they're doing it, but according to their descriptions, retiring the character for the few pickup shots they needed. Let's do the sentimental thing. Let's go and get his brothers. And they bring in his brothers to do a couple of pickup shots. And now that they have not, in his final appearance in Fast and the Furious, because there are some studios and some executives that could have gone that way. Universal did not. Big props to you guys at Universal for doing that. A lot of respect for that. All right, what's next?
At JT_Shadow35 tweets, this might be good or bad, but Neil Patrick Harris as the Riddler if he performed like he did in Gone Girl.
Oh, look, I make no question. I think Neil Patrick Harris is a good performer. I think he's a good performer. I think, not Academy Award level or anything like that, but when he's on screen and doing stuff, I get into it. I think he's charming and has got charisma, and he was actually quite good in Gone Girl. That being said, asking him about him as a certain character, whatever, the problem is, and we get into this all the time, is that you are trying to create the movie around what you think the casting should be. Look, a lot of people were coming out and saying Bryan Cranston should be Lex Luthor. And sure, in a version of Batman or Superman, that could make sense. But once we found out what the character was actually going to be, a young entrepreneurial, multi-billionaire head of a company, well, okay, young, blah, blah. Clearly, now Bryan Cranston does not fit that mold. He's not right for that role. So it's impossible for us to sit back and say, would this guy be great as the Riddler? First of all, we have no idea if they're going to use the Riddler, and if they do, we don't know what kind of Riddler they're going for. Once we know that, then we can start guessing and speculating who a good fit for that would be. But you write the character around the movie. You don't write the movie around the character. Anyway, Dennis, what do you think?
I wouldn't mind it. I think he would do a good job. I mean, you're right in the sense of we don't know what character they are, but just to throw it out there, I wouldn't mind seeing him. At first, I thought you were going to talk about his Oscar hosting performance.
Oh my gosh.
but as a performer, yeah, I think he could. I think he could do it.
Yeah, I agree that I'd want to see what incarnation of the character is in this version. The thing with Neil Patrick Harris, he was great in Gone Girl, and he's great when he's in comedies and stuff too. What I'm worried about is the Riddler hamming it up. That's when he starts to get too cartoonish, and I don't think in this world it's going to work. But
I don't want it to become Harold and Kumar meets the Riddler.
That's what and sometimes if he overdoes it, then I'd be skeptical. But he is a very capable actor, so who knows?
All right, what's next?
At Flirt Tweets, what was the last movie you went to where you were the only one in the theater?
Mordecai.
Really? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember you actually took a picture, and you should have seen this. There was this. I follow him and stuff like that, and then I'm going through my Facebook feed, and there's this picture of Christian just sitting in the middle of this totally empty theater. It's like getting ready for Mordecai.
Yeah.
It happens to me more times than you'd think, because I'm the type of guy that if I like a movie, I go back to see it 4, 5, 6 times. And I like going to see it when it's right on its tail end. So a lot of times I'll go to a movie on its like last couple of days it's in theater. So sure, not a lot of people in there. But the last time I remember going to a movie where it was still in like its first week, and literally like nobody was in there other than Soul, who came with me, was movie 43.
Oh, good Lord.
Movie 43. Now it was just me and Soul. Soul is our buddy. He's the big exec producer over at the Fine Brothers. We started with just the two of us in the theater. Half hour later, it was just Soul because I left. So I mean, that's loud. What about you guys?
For me, it was Vampire Academy. I went to go see it just because it was like I think it was the director of Mean Girls, and I was like, I was crossing my fingers. Maybe I was the only one in the theater. I remember this. It wasn't completely empty, but Transcendence. There was only 2 other people in there besides me. Yeah. And I laid down and took a little nap.
What about you, Sinead? What's the last time you went to a movie and like you walked in with your friends or your date or whatever and just looked around and was like empty?
Well, I usually don't ever go to movies until it's like going to be out of theaters soon, because I have like horrible anxiety. I don't like being around
crowds.
People. When I went to go see John Wick, actually, I walked in, there was nobody else there, and then like 2 other people showed up.
Sad.
But all I can say really is if you are alone in the theater and you walk in, if you're going to see a movie, and you walk in and there's only 1 other person in the theater, you have to sit really far away.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you will inevitably, undoubtedly be judged so hard if you sit so close to somebody else who's alone in a theater.
It's true.
All right, folks. Well, that will do it for this installment of AMC Movie Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, don't forget, lots of great films playing at AMC Theaters right now. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for all of your theater, showtime, and of course your movie ticket information. If you want an audio-only version of this episode, look in the description of this video and you'll find a link to our podcast feed for all our AMC Movie News shows. And don't forget to click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share this video on your Facebook and Twitter and various social media accounts as well. I want to thank the guys sitting at the table with me. First of all, sitting to my left, Mr. Dennis Zen. Dennis, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter at ThinkHero or on Instagram, Dennis.tzeng.
Over here, sitting to my right, Mr. Christian Harloff. Christian, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter, and keep sending those AMC Jedi Council questions in. I'm looking at them for next week.
And of course, our lovely host today, Miss Sinead DeFries. Sinead, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Sinead DeFries and at thatsosinead.com.
And you can find me on all the various social media networks. Follow me on Twitter or on Facebook, just at John Campea. That'll do it for us, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. My name's John Campea for AMC Movie News. Until next time, bye-bye.